Hi, my name is Stacey Agdern, and I love looking at the cross-sections between different things that I love.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. I am here this evening. It's the Monday of Memorial Day weekend, and I'm here with author Stacey Agdern. Stacey writes romance novels, which we are going to get into, and we met on Twitter where I am still able to meet so many good people. Stacey, how are you doing tonight?
Thank you so much for having me, Leah. I am doing pretty good. But yeah, no, I love, one of the things I love about social media, Twitter in particular, is like the cross section of people that you meet there, and like the things that you learn about, the people that their interests, like all of these kinds of amazing things that you've never heard of before, things you'd like to learn more about. So it's like,
yeah. So I believe your book cover was retweeted into my feed, probably by Sarah Anderson,
who we love because she is awesome.
She is fantastic. She was on last year, and with this like mega introduction to romance. Yep. It was so fun. But we're just going to get into it. This is launch week for you, right?
Yeah. The B'nai Mitzvah Mistake releases on June 1st from Tule Publishing.
So I am so excited on so many levels. One, because I was 30 when I had my bat mitzvah.
Which is awesome.
I converted to Judaism in my 20s and read Torah for the first time for my 30th birthday.
I love it.
And
I love it.
I sent out like pink and purple invitations, and there was a fish platter, and there was a party.
That's the best.
Like everything I ever thought a bat mitzvah was when I was 12 or 13, I made it happen for mine at 30, and it was amazing. Yes.
That's the best. Like, and
great.
One of the things like that, and that I knew already, but like when I was writing the book, it kind of brought it home. Like I had my bat mitzvah that was very pink and very purple when I was 12, back in the day. Like I posted on Instagram, and I'll post it again. The period accurate photos of myself with my hair. It was hilarious and very like period accurate, like out to here. But like the thing was, when I did that time was made for me. Like my parents and family made sure that I studied, that I learned my Torah portion, that I learned my Haftarah portion, that I wrote my speech, that I did all the things. But like, you had to make that time for yourself. Like you had to carve that time for yourself. And that is like a big thing. Like one of the things that inspired the book in the first place was the fact that one of my brother's best friends from childhood, his mother had her bat mitzvah. And I remember being like young and at this bat mitzvah, being just like in awe in a lot of ways and kind of surprised. But like, again, I was young, I was a kid. I didn't understand the story behind it, because there's always a story. There's always a reason. Like, even if it's just like, I want to do the next thing in my life, I didn't have a chance to do it when I was younger, or I was missing it and I didn't have a chance to do it when I was younger, or I didn't want it, or it wasn't a thing I was thinking of. Like that's kind of the benefit of doing it as an adult. Like there are so many reasons and whys and wherefores. Like you can just kind of find, the bottom line is that you make the time, and that is amazing and admirable and wonderful.
So for people, I have some non-Jewish listeners, the bat mitzvah, bar and bat mitzvah, or B mitzvah. Is the coming of age ceremony for Jewish kids when they become an adult, when the mitzvot become their responsibility. So they read Torah in front of their congregation, they give a speech, they might do a service project. Yep. And your book is adults who didn't get to celebrate their mitzvahs. And so is this what's the on one foot? I mean, other than I'm just so excited. Stacey, can you tell? There's never books so ripped from the headlines of my blog, and I love it.
Yeah, it's
not that I've dated a sexy hockey player yet.
but soon,
soon, yeah.
soon. Exactly. Like, you never know what's going to happen. You never who you're going to encounter in life and liberty and existence. But yeah, like so the story, the series is about a whole bunch of different things. It's about a family. It's about two sets of cousins, you know, two sets of sisters, and then who are two sets, and they're cousins. They're the four of them. And it follows a whole bunch of events within the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never really sure like how to start the series. And then I realized that it's the central sort of thing that pushes everything forward is when people meet in an adult B'nai Mitzvah class.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts everything rolling. And I had to kind of find a whole bunch of reasons for them to, like, a reason that they had to be able to get over, but was not, like, easily gotten over. Like, this had to, like, actually take, like, time to deal with.
Yeah.
And so what I settled on was something that happened in the main male character's hockey playing career. And to sort of like when he was very young and injured and a whole bunch of things happened as a result of that. And it derailed our main female character's sister's career and also made her sister look at this guy like he had 7 heads.
Okay.
In a way that's able to fix. So like all of those things tied together, plus like there was a whole conversation on Twitter of people talking about like adult coming of age conversations. And I think one of the people in that conversation, I want to say was Yamil Mendez, who wrote a book called Twice Upon a Quinceñera. And I was like, and then someone else was talking about a 30-year-old birthday. And I think like, so I'm like, you know, like a sweet 32 or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, wait a second. And then all of the things in my head sort of ran through, like, you know, my mother, my brother's best friend's mom, the stories I'd heard about Julian Edelman, and someone else who had her adult bat mitzvah who did a comedy special about it. And I was like, all of these things tied together, and I was like, that's the book.
This is a random question, but I'm going to ask it before I forget. A few years ago, Paul Scheer got into an argument with a romance writer about a hockey book. Was that you?
No, it was not. It was someone I know.
Okay.
It was not me.
Okay.
And she was fantastic. Like, she is much more, like, sleek and fantastic and fabulous than I am. I think she's, like, a former reporter. She's brilliant, generally speaking. She got him to read the books and, like, turned him into a fan. It was kind of amazing how that happened. Because she's brilliant. Like, hockey romance writers, like, the group of us, like, which is one of the other reasons why I'm kind of like fascinated by the whole like TikTok kind of hockey romance conversation, plus like professional hockey teams like noticing TikTok, but that's another story entirely. Like, you know, like that whole conversation is fascinating because like what, you know, portrayals of hockey and hockey romance in social media and media in general is kind of like usually a slightly terrifying proposition. So
sure. Because I listened to How Did This Get Made? That's my favorite podcast. And it comes up from time to time about how and the story he always tells is like, he read it, he was wrong. He took back what he said, that how much he ultimately enjoyed the interaction and enjoyed the read. And he is now a defender of romance and hockey romance in particular. Yep.
I think it was Victoria Denault who was the author in question. I think.
I'll do a little research.
Yeah, but I think that's who it was because she's the one who I was thinking of. Again, like very sort of fantastic and very like sleek as a former reporter. Like, yeah, she's just really amazing. And like, it's interesting. It was interesting to watch that interaction because she was just like, oh no, we are not doing this.
Yeah. So I don't know if I know that there are tropes within romance. There's enemy to lovers. There's and other tropes. That's the only one I can think of right now.
Yeah, there are tons of different ones.
And I guess I knew like there are period pieces. Like, are you looking for bodice rippers? Are you looking for like what time era?
Yep.
But it is only clicking for me now that like hockey romance is a subgenre within
contemporary. Yes.
Okay.
You have like the general sort of contemporary. Like the thing is like one of the things I've loved about romance novels, generally speaking, and I'm someone who's been, up to here in romance novels, generally speaking, because I was a bookseller for 10 years. Like, I reviewed for a whole bunch of places who no longer exist, and like a whole bunch of other things I've done in my existence. So like, romance novels and me were like this. So one of the things I've always loved about the genre, I mean, aside from the fact that I read, but anyway, I digress. One of the things I've always loved about the genre is how flexible it is in terms of like, as long you can have it, on a far off moon of Endor, or in like 1940s. Not 1940s. We will not discuss 1940s because that ended in disaster because people don't know how to deal with that. But anyway, like 1840s England,
right?
And and you can set it anywhere, do anything, as long as we have as a through line a couple who ends up like in some facet of together at the end of the story. That's it. That's all you really need. So like, but the thing is, one of the things I've loved about the genre is its concept of a series, right? Like, and I don't just mean the type of romance, I mean like, multiple books in a row. That's what I'm talking about in terms of series.
Right. So like you said, your Jewish series has two sets of sisters who are cousins, so that gives you like,
you get 4 books.
All their world,
4 books, the whole, 4 books of different, and like going back to that, like generally speaking, a romance series is going to be in one of a couple formats. It's going to be either a family, it's going to be a group of friends, or it's going to be a group of coworkers.
Okay.
Right?
Like so Bridgerton is like is
a family series.
It's a family series. Okay.
It's a very traditional historical family series.
And if you did a novelization of Parks and Rec, ultimately like every character has their love story.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm getting it.
Because like when you think about like other books and series, right? When you think about thriller series, 90% of the time you have this one main character who does his thing and moves on to the next city or the next town to deal with the next problem. Same with mysteries. Like you have the detective and their supporting cast and they have the next mystery, right? That's how they conceptualize series. Romance series, because the ending is a definitive, whether it's, however, happily ever after, happy for now, the couple's story ends at the end of the book. So you have to do one of a couple of things to create a multi-book series arc in a romance series if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Now that you say it out loud, it's crystal clear why. Like, it's not a Don Juan, right, story where it's not.
That's not a romance novel.
That's not romance, right.
Because you can't take that. Like, of course, like, the most famous example, I want to say, like, there was an author who had of like one of the sort of older sort of generation alt authors who's kind of a classic in terms of the genre, who made it her kind of thing where our central female character would have an extended series, and basically her husband would die at the beginning, either the end of the book or the beginning of the next one. So like she would get so like it would so so it would be her story, but generally,
but not in a Black Widow murder sort of way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Although there have been those, but and that's not a romance novel. You see.
So B'nai Mitzvah Mistake.
Yep.
Comes out on Thursday?
Yes, on Thursday, June 1st.
So exciting. So before I hit record, you mentioned a Chicagoland bookstore that is about to reopen. Love's Sweet Arrow.
Yes, they are fantastic. They have been around for a while. They are wonderful members of the romance community. They have supported the romance genre, generally speaking, and so many different authors, both Chicago and elsewhere. In fact, Love Sweet Arrow, Marissa and Rose Backlund were the ones who, Roseanne Backlund, they were the people who hosted my virtual debut author event.
Wonderful.
Which, yeah, it was in the depths of the pandemic, a bookstore in Chicago gave me the debut launch party that I'd kind of always wanted and never actually expected to ever get. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So they're going to reopen soon.
Yes.
I assume that they ship.
Yes, they do. They ship.
Great.
They are local and they're local to Chicago, and they also ship. I think they ship internationally, I believe, but they are wonderful, and they are just really nice people, and they do a really great job in terms of their stock and support. So
outstanding.
Yeah.
And they do, this is cute, blind dates where they will send you a wrapped book.
Yes.
And subscription boxes. Subscription boxes.
They're wonderful. They're so lovely.
They seem like a delight.
They're soft launching the new location on June 1st. So something fun is being cooked up in the process. We don't know what it is yet, but I was like, the people who hosted my debut book signing, my debut book event, and are reopening on the release day of my 4th book, like,
that's
we have
wonderful.
to do something. So something is in the works.
Okay, so this is your 4th
solo my 4th
book?
solo. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. It's my 4th solo.
So you have Miracles and Menorahs, History of Us, Love and Lockkeys, and now B'nai Mitzvah Mistake.
Yep.
Plus you've got, so the hockey ones, are those anthologies that you have short stories in?
Yeah, so quite a number of years ago, I think it was like quite a number of years ago, one of my very close friends, Isabel Kelly, and I bonded over a love of hockey. And she's like a multi-published author in paranormal romance and contemporary romance. She's wonderful. And I started talking with Cassandra Carr, who at the time was multi-published in erotic romance and also a hockey fan. And the three of us wrote the first anthology of the New York Empires together, based on the tradition of a Vegas night. 3 players on the same team, 3 different ideas. And then for the next series, Kenzie McLear, who is Laura Hudsacker and Heather Lear, I'm not sure how she pronounces. Anyway, who together joined Isabeau and I to do a 2 different set of books. Also on the Empire. Same team, again, more players, like later on, like what happens next. The second one is about a winter game. But of course we know who that is. The outdoor game that takes place on New Year's Day at an alt sports stadium. We do not mention the name because we are aware of copyright and it exists and we do not want to. But fun fact about that was that took place before the Rangers and the Sabres played at Citi Field. So
you wrote a book about a winter game, predicting a game that came.
Yes, which was
what? Yes,
which was hilarious and amazing and kind of fun. And then the third book was based on quite a number of years ago. The Florida Panthers had what was called Chance of a Lifetime, where if you wanted to try to be a backup side goaltender for the Panthers, you could compete. And my story was sort of inspired by a lot of different things, but one of which was that Linda Cohn, who is a reporter for ESPN and has been for a long time, is also a goaltender, and so and she was actually invited to compete for this.
Nice.
And of course they did a whole story on it, but in my head that was what was one of the many things that inspired me on my story. So
that happened within the last 5 years in Chicago. Their side it was the janitor or someone came out and then also saved stopped a goal.
He was an accountant, if memory serves.
An accountant, yes.
And it was so funny because, and this actually ties into things that I adore to pieces. So one of the other, so like around the time where this particular accountant had saved the day and played emergency backup goaltender for the Chicago hockey team, I was at a songwriter series at the old Opry City stage in New York with a bunch of very close friends who were there to appreciate the songwriting being talked about, because there were like, really huge big name songwriters. And all of a sudden, one of them started talking about his hockey team and the things that he was doing, and he used the word EBUG, and of course they had no idea what he was talking about. So I had to explain exactly what this particular Grammy-winning songwriter was doing on his off days with the Nashville Predators. So
amazing.
Yep.
And what EVA?
EBUG. Emergency backup goaltender. Is
literally what we were just talking about.
Yeah, it is exactly that's exactly what it, but that's the abbreviation. That's what it means. The other famous one is a guy by the name of David Ayers, who, as the story goes, was the Toronto Zamboni driver who also served as like either emergency backup goaltender for the Toronto like hockey stadium for like, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, or just generally for Toronto. And like he ended up getting in net for Carolina.
Okay.
And saving a goal. And like, and like actually playing for Carolina. And like the Hurricanes beat the Leafs, and it became like a huge deal, like, and kind of like half of a joke for years, like, you guys got beat by your own Zamboni driver.
Right.
But he was awesome about the whole thing. Like, he was kind of amazing. Like, they celebrated him in Carolina. It was great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. So the book, B'nai Mitzvah Mistake.
Yes.
Available June 1st. People can order either from Love Sweet Arrow. I'll link to it on Bookshop.
Yes.
I want all of my pop culture Jewish girlies and boys to get these books. I'm going to make sure that my friends at the Bagel Report know about it, and also at Friday Night Movie Podcast.
Oh, awesome.
Who are my two big like Jewish pop culture podcasts that I'm friends with. And how do we start telling Hallmark to make your books? Is that would you ever want to see him on screen in a script, or is this, or not?
It's funny because like I have always like, so fun fact, like, so in 2016, 2017, 2018, I was involved in a really, really, really cool project called the Rogue series. The group that I was with were basically, in the wake of a particular election, writing our political happily ever afters in ways that the political environment could not give us. And they were, for me and for us in a lot of ways of processing current events through the lens of romance shorts. More so than other things that I had written before those 4 stories. Usually when I'm writing, and this is probably more information than you need or want, but basically
it is not more information. I love this stuff. So, why would I start a podcast like this if this was too much information, Stacey?
Well, I'm always like trying to like be careful and pay attention to stuff. But anyway, so when I'm writing, usually I'm writing about stuff that I've already processed. I've already dealt with it. I've already made my decision. This is going to be, I soapbox myself away into a book. Like there are some parts of B'nai Mitzvah where it's probably kind of obvious, but that's kind of how it works in some ways. Sure. The stories that I wrote for the Rogue anthologies were different. I was still feeling very strongly, and I still do about all of the stuff that I write about. But generally speaking, like, that was closer to the bone. Those 4 stories that I wrote were much closer to the bone, and you could kind of But the thing was, like, they were necessary, and I was writing with so many brilliant writers during that period of time, and I loved all 4 of those stories. I loved all 4 of those anthologies. But the thing was, after I finished, I was quite simply exhausted mentally in ways that I'd never been before. And I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like, my brain is just not, like, I can't hold, but, you know. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up watching a lot of Hallmark movies. You know, one of the things that they do really, really well, and the writers are brilliant at it, is create a safe place for your brain. They give you a mental fuzzy blanket.
Yes.
You know, consistently they've gotten better at, like, talking about really, really interesting things in the context of the movies, which is another weird, fun, interesting fact that I can talk about later. But bottom line, at this point, they were my fuzzy blanket. I watched a ton of them, and I still do. Like, I still love them for that. But what ended up happening, I'm trying to remember, I think it was it Nisha Shara who talked about this for the first time, where it was like the Jenny Cruzy, like, if you start watching, like, either you start reading like 100 books, like, before you write one or something like that. And that's kind of sort of what started happening to me, where I started watching for joy.
Yeah.
I started watching the movies that you know, proceeded to destroy my preconceived notions about Hallmark movies. And then mentally started to go, what if? What if? The quintessential writer question, what if, what if, what if? You know, what if the holiday they were celebrating was Hanukkah? What if the characters were Jewish? What if, what if, what if? What if, you know, what if the small town looked a little bit more like the small town I grew up in? What if there was no zero-sum game between between city and small town? What if, what if, what if? And lo and behold, that's how we ended up with Miracles, Menorahs. And the series that follows is my love letter to my culture, our culture, and Hallmark movies. So, like, would I love to see them on Hallmark? Yes. Would I absolutely adore in the back of my head to see Point Grey do a series adaptation of these movies together? Absolutely. Point Grey is Seth Rogen's production company. Ever since I saw American Pickle, I was like, this has to be done. This is.
Yeah.
But yes, I would love it. I absolutely would love it. And it's interesting you say that, because like would I like, you know, you'd like to see my stuff adapted. Like, one of the funniest things through this whole process is it was the fact that, like, so Hanukkah on Rye was this year's Hallmark Hanukkah movie. And one of the big central points of Hanukkah on Rye was the conversation about the Lower East Side and how it was important to retain the legacy and the history of the Lower East Side, even as we sort of head into the future. And when I was writing, like, months before the B'nai Mitzvah Mistake, there was a conversation with my editor about, do you really need to put this in? Or you really have to explain this? You really have to talk about this? But I'm like, yes, I have to explain this. Yes, this is important. Yes, this is one of the things that brings these two characters who come at it from opposite sides together. This is one of the first things they do together, where they're not, like, glaring at each other. You know, they go to, like, the fake Yonah Schimmel's place, which does play a role in the series, and they go to the Eldridge Street Synagogue together. Yeah. Because that heritage means so much to them. Yeah. I did not expect ever in a million years that, like, the movie that came out 6 months before my book would, that I had written, like, 6 months or more before came out, would echo the conversations in each other. Like, I never thought that a Hallmark movie would have that level of, like, Jewish heritage conversation in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big improvement. They're getting better every year, for sure.
It's wonderful to see. Like, again, like, you know, the thing that I always think about is like, if you had told me this would be happening 5 years ago, how would I react? If you had told me this would happen 10 years ago, how would I react?
Right.
You know, like if you had told me this would happen after like the disaster of the Joey Lawrence movie, I would literally tell you absolutely no way, this would never happen.
The disaster of the Joey Lawrence movie. What was that?
It is better left not discussed. What I will say is that the very first time Hallmark tried an interfaith holiday movie, Joey Lawrence was one of the two stars. It was his grandmother and who wanted him to be a happy Italian married to someone quickly, and the heroine was Jewish. And it was like filled with ridiculously bad stereotypes that was nobody's fault except the bad script that like they fixed. Like they didn't touch Hanukkah for years until the double year with double holiday and holiday date at the same time. But that was why. It was because that was so bad. That was awful.
The storyline on IMDb, right? Like they are, they agree to pose as a couple, and I love a couple that is
great,
right? And things get complicated when Rob's Catholic clan and Julie's Jewish family get involved.
It was so awful. Like again, like full of ridiculously bad stereotypes, and that movie should never have existed in the first place. But again, if it hadn't, you wouldn't have ended up with Hanukkah with the trajectory that leads to Hanukkah on Rye.
Yeah. So fun.
Yes.
So fun.
Yes.
Again, before we hit record, you said that one of your favorite things is crossovers, the intersection between two of your favorite things like Nashville songwriters and emergency backup goaltenders. So let's talk about that a little bit, the crossovers that you love so much.
So like going back to Love Sweet Era, I mean, if this doesn't tell you anything about me, I'm not quite sure what does. So clearly from that anecdote about the whole Nashville songwriters and EBUGs, you can tell that I loved in the before going to songwriter series shows. You know, I used to love going to like various venues across New York City to see famous Nashville songwriters talking about their stories and craft. At some point in my life, because my friends my friends would always not think it would be a songwriter show that I would be attending if I didn't have my notebook, because I always had my notebook. In fact, one of my favorite bits of advice I had gotten from one of these songwriter shows is from a songwriter named Mcanally, who is pretty famous for a lot of reasons. He's written a whole string of hits. He actually, I think, is one of the people behind Shucked right now. And he was on Songland for a while on was that NBC? Anyway, he did one of the songwriter shows in New York City, and when he was talking about how he wrote this Miranda Lambert song, he said that it isn't write what you know. It's take what you know and make it universal. And I literally had been attending like 20 million conferences and a whole bunch of writers' things for years, and I couldn't get write what you know was so like a ubiquitous piece of advice, and he just made it much more palatable. I'm like, there you go. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Which is
take what you know and make it universal.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Which has helped me a lot considering what I write. Like it's you know, like I think about tropes, and I think about like how to like, you know, my joke title for the B'nai Mitzvah date. We were talking about tropes earlier. My joke title is only one B'nai Mitzvah date. Again, like because forced proximity is usually shorthand to only one bed, but it's really a larger question about shoving two people in the same space, whatever that space is, and forcing them not to leave. But anyway, you can tell that I love these songwriter shows, and you can tell that I love the energy, and I love listening to these songwriters talking, and I love all of the things about it. And so when it was time for me to plan my my debut book launch, I wasn't the first class of people in 2020 who had book launches, who had to somehow figure out how to pivot.
Right.
I was in October, so I had time, and I watched people figure out what worked, figured out what they wanted, figure out how they could do things. And I was like, this is amazing. I was like, yes, circumstances are awful and horrible, but this gives me a chance that I never would have ever. And so I kind of took a bold step. I missed songwriter series desperately. I missed going to them. I missed seeing them. I missed the camaraderie of them. And one of the things I love very much is Jewish music. I'm a huge Jewish music fan. And I don't know how it happened, but again, we were talking about social media and talking about the kinds of people that we get to talk to on social media. And one of the people that I'd somehow managed to strike up a conversation with a long time ago was a singer-songwriter by the name of Joe Buchanan.
Okay.
He is from Texas. He is a song leader cantor in Texas. His story is fantastic. So is his music. He does Americana. He's like a Jewish Americana singer. He's kind of amazing. And
Joe Buchanan. I'm just gonna go see how many people I've got in common with him on Facebook.
He is wonderful. And he so what ended up happening was like
19 mutual friends. That sounds about right.
Yep. So I approached him. I said, listen, I have this wild, ridiculous idea. Do you want to collaborate? I was like, I've got some of your songs on my playlist for the new book, and also the book that I'm working on right now, which was History of Us at the time. And I was like, would you like to come and play and read the book and talk? And he's like, my wife's a huge romance reader. I'm like, excellent.
Oh, fantastic.
So if you search on YouTube for this event, I think it was called Music and Miracles and Menorahs. It's myself and Joe Buchanan launching Miracles and Menorahs. He played Shine, which I love of his, which is on the playlist for Miracles and Menorahs. And then he played Small Town Tonight, which is on the playlist for History of Us. And we talked about my book, and we talked about his music, and we talked about Judaism, and it was wonderful.
How wonderful. I love that.
Like, and I was excited. And again, this never would have happened if my book had released like any other time. Because October was that sweet spot of people sort of settling into lives and how they worked, and sort of learning that basically the sky's the limit.
Yep.
You know, as you're launching a book, like in this weird time, like how do you do a live
pre-vaccine, but post everybody's downloaded Zoom.
Exactly.
And we've now gone, if it's October of 2020, we've made it through High Holy Days, which really unlocked a lot of creativity in the Jewish world as far as like what can you do online and the special agreements synagogues had with Zoom to let a Zoom meeting run 72 hours. So it would run all through Hag and Shabbat.
It was
I was president of my synagogue at the time and like de facto tech captain. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. I'm president again now. I took 2 years off. I'm back. And it's nice not to have to also be running Shabbat technology.
Yes. I could imagine. My gosh. Yeah. Like, and I was just like, you know, an author debuting. So like, I didn't have the stress and pressure of like regular, like, and I was also the daughter of someone who was, you know, attending, who was on the board, but not involved. Like, wow. Like going back to that time. And then, but also like, if you think about what that time and what unleashed, Passover.
Yeah. Saturday Night Seder.
Yes.
With Alex Edelman.
Yep.
And Jew Belong? I think was the organization he did it with. Yeah, that was wonderful. Yep.
Yes. I'm still waiting for Adina Menzel's 4 questions because I would like them released. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
They were beautiful. Like, you could tell how many times I've watched this by, like, I could say.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I actually wrote, because I was switching from History of Us to, I was switching from Miracles to History? Yes. Where I wasn't sure what was happening, what was going on, and I needed something to do because my brain was just not functional.
Sure.
I started what I like to call a hockey challenge.
Okay.
A hockey fiction challenge in the very early stages of the pandemic, and a whole bunch of people wrote some really cool stuff with me. What happened was I was getting really annoyed. People were like, I miss hockey. I miss this. I miss that. And the great thing about social media was that, like, if you could create that kind of fun content, you could maybe fill a void.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I got a whole bunch of hockey romance writers on a mailing list. And every day I would send out a word. I would send out a hockey term. And I was like, here's the instructions. You need to post this at this time, or at this time to catch the spaces where the hockey games would have been filled. You know, it's a writing prompt. Like, you don't have to participate, but if you do, these are the rules. Enjoy, have fun, and a lot of people did. And we got some really great stories coming out of it. And I actually ended up writing a pandemic Passover hockey story.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had written, as I said, I wrote 4 stories for the Rogue Project, and there was a hanging character in the series, and I was like, I wanted to somehow write her story. So I had her as a moderator of a women's hockey chat room. And one of the people that showed up every day for the regular chat, because of course, like, one of the things that, like, happens, like, during a pandemic, during, like, a difficult time, is that you find community somewhere. Doesn't matter where it is, you got to find it somewhere. And
I am deeply involved in the Doughboys Discord, which is a fast food podcast Discord community that became some of my dearest friends during the pandemic. Absolutely.
Yeah, my romance schmooze peeps, my, like, yes, all the things.
Yeah.
But, like, so we had this women's hockey chat room, and one of the people who comes every day for this, like, 12 to 1 chat or something like that was this person who she doesn't know who they are. Doesn't know. And it turns out that this person is actually this, like, rookie. This, like, very top draft choice. Who is trying to figure out what to do with himself.
Without hockey.
Yep.
All right.
And he falls in love.
What is a young man to do with himself without hockey?
Exactly. He's stuck because, like, that's what he's done all his life. You know, he's young.
Yep.
He's an early draft pick, so he's gone from, like, wherever right to the pros. You know, and he's living with his cousin. Who is driving him absolutely bananas.
Sure.
He is helping with various projects that his cousin and his friends are doing in New York, but he is bored out of his skull. And so he watches a random women's hockey game on the women's pro game on the television or on YouTube or wherever, and he falls in love with the sport. Falls in love with everything and watches all of them. Watches everything and finds this community that he can talk with. And he goes into this chat room under an alias.
Right.
And it gets, like, and and shenanigans ensue, basically.
Sure.
And the story is called The Fifth Question.
I love it.
Because they are shoved together by her sister and his cousin, because he can teach her the 4 questions.
All right.
But she doesn't know that he is actually the guy in the chat room.
Wait, so she meets them offline too?
Well, in the chat room and outside the chat room, not off.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like because
Yes.
at that time there was
Yeah.
But
there was-
yes.
How fun.
So I wrote that story for my friend Lucy Eden's Notes from Paradise newsletter a couple of years ago. But the fun fact that at some point very soon, we're not quite sure when this is happening, I am releasing a collection of the 5 stories, the 4 rogue stories, which dealt with a whole bunch of stuff, and the 5th question under the anthology title, The Hope Connection. So watch for that. That is happening soon.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Can I ask where your love of hockey comes from?
So I am like 2nd generation, 3rd generation, like Ranger fan. Like we're talking my grandmother, my grandfather, who we're not quite sure whether he was born in New York or in Poland for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Sure.
Excuse me. Skipped like Stuyvesant High School or Columbia to go and see the Rangers. Like in like their glory days. Like so that's where the sort of the blood comes from. That's where the rooting interest comes from.
Yep.
But it was something that I did with my family until I went to university. And this is a wild story. So my first year at university, I lived in an all-girls dorm. I went into the television room, and lo and behold, there were 4 gals sitting and watching television. One was a Winnipeg Jets fan, one was a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, one was a Vancouver Canucks fan. And I was like sitting there and enjoying myself. And they were like, "Are you a hockey fan too?" And I was like, and then like the Ranger fan that was sitting deep inside of me sort of bubbled up and said, "Yes!" And I was. And that was a wild, magical year. Like I was watching, hockey with these gals, screaming our heads off. This wasn't just something that I did with my family, going to random, like a game a year, sitting in the seats that my dad could get from work. It was important, and I was watching all the time. And it got to
Did you go to school in Canada?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm like, did you just happen to find the one Midwestern dorm with 4 Canadian hockey fans?
No.
That seems strange. Okay.
No, it was wild because like that first year I was grabbing onto stuff that like all of the things that reminded me of home, and hockey was one of them in its own way.
Yeah.
There was The Gap, there was Seinfeld, there was The Nanny, there was like the fact that like 90210 and Saved by the Bell both graduated high school with me. So like they were all having like college episodes. Yes, I am dating myself specifically, but no more specifically than the fact that like when the Rangers got into the playoffs that year, it was during exam time, end of the year. So like I had to like I couldn't watch in public anymore because I was loud and also like obsessive because things were getting a little nuts. So like on the on the outside of my door I had to write, "Warning, loud sounds may emanate from this room, Ranger fan watching playoff." I would scream like, again, I've got my like grandfather's and my mom's lungs, so I'm a loud person and I get deeply involved. And I got home from university my first year. There was a whole ton of things that happened, but one thing that also did that summer basically turned me into like the Ranger fan for life, which was the fact that the Rangers won the Stanley Cup.
Oh,
so it was like all of these wild things happened my first year at university. Yeah. They haven't won since, but it's it's fandom. Like, it's like romance novels. It's one of those things where like you dive in and you're stuck. You're not going anywhere because there's such a variety to explore. There's so much like, within, there's like so many conversations happening, so many people coming at it from different ways, like whether it's, so.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, like TikTok and hockey.
Yep.
So I flip channels on TikTok at probably an hour a day. I love TikTok, but the algorithm, it will change its mind today. I'm going to start getting hockey TikTok, I know, in an hour, but like, what's happening is it specifically like hockey romance TikTok, or is it hockey teams starting to go on TikTok? Like, what did that mean when you said hockey TikTok?
So it's kind
Hockey
of
talk.
interesting. So comparatively recently, what started was some teams on social media are really, really good about posting pictures of the players as they're getting ready in their suits to sort of like, on Instagram, because people like that, as we were heading into the playoffs, one of my friends who is an Islanders fan was like, "Yes, we're getting suit pics," and I was like, "It's not a new thing. It's not a thing that you get normally." And she said, "No, actually," she's like, "only in the playoffs does they." I was like, "Oh, okay," but that sort of rose in a lot of ways to increased interactions, and then one of the teams, the Seattle Kraken, started directly engaging with hockey romance TikTok.
Okay.
Hey, Book Talk, look at this. Hey, Book Talk, your new favorite player. Hey, Book Talk. And all of a sudden, it was this like wild thing. And the thing is, 90% of the time, like I'm always wary about this, like this idea of the crossover between my sports fandoms and like romance media.
Sure.
Because generally speaking, what happens, it's either like a terrifying thing where like you realize who the actual people are. Like there was a baseball movie with like the Mets on it, I want to say, on Hallmark recently. And people were like, "Oh my God, this is so bad, blah, blah, blah." Takes sports, female sports fandom back to like blah, blah, blah. And I had the, the Bo Burnham Spider in the House song.
No.
So like it's
I'll look it up. I'll link to it. Yeah.
It's been turned into a meme for, "Oh, you're this way." The spider in the house shows up and all of a sudden like it's sort of like, you're not it's shows kind of the real person that they'd been with all this.
Okay.
It's a hard thing to explain, but basically it's been turned into a meme where like someone says their certain thing and then when they're confronted by something outside of their preconceived notions about what that thing should be. Yeah.
Got it.
Then you're like, "Oh, that's the real you. Hello, nice to meet you." Like, kind of thing.
Got it.
And so there were a lot of those moments with the Mets movie. I was like, "Oh, I see you.
Yeah.
You're inclusive. You're wonderful, except when it comes to a romance novel. I see," kind of thing. Like, although nothing can top the amazing reaction to the partnership between the Hallmark movie and the Rangers when Rangers Twitter like reacted so wholesomely to the defenseman who showed up. That was kind of amazing. And every once in a while, one of the peeps that I follow on Rangers Twitter was like, "And we love this defenseman," who is of course the defenseman who played in the Hallmark movie. Anyway, but so needless to say, when the Kraken started sort of directly interacting with romance book talk, I was kind of terrified because as someone who's been like looking at it from the other side for so long, like, I am very excited, like, as a romance reader to be like, yes, like, you're finally embracing this thing that I love. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, please let me not see, like, the ridiculous morons who, like, don't think it's a good idea. You know, or, like, please let me not see the gatekeeping from, like, either Romance Landia or,
or the hockey. Or hockey.
Exactly.
Right.
It's both. Both are possible. Like, both suck. Like, the gatekeeping both absolutely stink. So needless to say, but like there's this amazing like crop of people. Like I know, I think one of the books that the Kraken mascot picked up was Icebreaker. I forget who the author is, but it's a comparatively new book that's looking all over TikTok. But the other one was Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. And I want to give a shout out to Rachel Lynn Solomon, who like when she thought that it was her book that the Kraken mascot was holding, she was all excited and like started talking about like why it was so important that he did this, because she was, like living in Seattle or like around Seattle when the Kraken were even like an idea in people's eye.
Yeah.
And she, like was all excited that like this kind of sort of came full circle for her. So it was kind of cool. But like, it's, it's really, really interesting. So like the Kraken were first to kind of go, hey, book talk. But now the whole bunch of the other playoff teams did it, like Carolina Hurricanes, And I do a week, like a monthly live show on YouTube called The Chippy Chicks with 4 other romance writers.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this, and like we were debating as to which teams were going to start. And I kind of joked, I was like, the Rangers have been really, really good in terms of their social media, but I feel like this is something that they would pick up like 3 years from now. Like they're, you know, because they're still original silks. They still feel like they have to be a little bit old school, even though they're not as much in terms of like the suit pics. Like they're very like, you know, forward. Like they've shown a lot of graphics that they wouldn't have shown like 5 years ago. But again, like they're still like behind. But it's just really interesting to sort of see that sort of confluence between like hockey and romance novels. Talk and kind of like to see what they're going next. I think I saw a Detroit Red Wings one this morning, and I think San Jose Sharks might be next, which I'm not surprised at all. So,
that's
yeah,
wild.
Yeah, like, you know, hey, Book Talk, this is why you should follow us, and then it's a picture of a player with a suit, like kind of, you know, on TikTok, like showing himself. For lack of a better explanation.
So funny.
It is.
Because what I have seen are, and I think it's because earlier in my career I was was a social media manager, worked with a lot of big brands on social media. So sometimes I get the like social media coordinator or managers. I get their content where it's like the video facing the social media manager while she tries to get the suit pictures.
Yeah.
And like whether or not they stop for her, whether or not they acknowledge her.
Yeah. I've seen some of those. Yeah. Because it depends on some of the teams you give them. So I've definitely seen some of those.
Yeah. So I've seen that side of it. So I know that
the other
TikTok
is coming.
is listening. It's coming.
The other is coming for sure. Because Excuse me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And still Rangers fan.
Yes. I mean, they're my basic, but like they're like my, you know, my family team. They're my home team. They're everything. But like, I'm also a huge hockey fan. So like, and of course, I'm like pro-Jewish. So like, I've been staring at the Edmonton Oilers and the Zach Hyman Hebrew jersey they've had for the last couple of years, and I'm like drooling over it. The way that they have made that man feel so comfortable in his skin and his Judaism, like I would, like that team has made some questionable choices, but that is not one of them, and I'm so happy. Like,
nice,
like to see him flourish that way and to see him being so open that way.
Yeah, I remember some of his, because he feels open and comfortable speaking out about antisemitism.
Yep,
I feel like he had a really good op-ed or interview. Yep. It definitely made like all of my Jewish circles. I got it sent to me many times from many people.
Yep. Actually, it was kind of interesting. Like he made some comments in there that resonated with things that Adam Fox said in an interview with, I want to say, the JTI. And one of those two things, if you kind of like put them side by side, like very similar in a lot of ways. And of course, in the back of my head, the writer's going, what if? Like, are they talking? Should they talk? Are they looking? Because they both sounded like they were looking for community. They were looking for community when hockey. Yeah. You know, and I couldn't help notice that after some of Hyman's recent comments and some things that Quinn Hughes said, that they are on very similar ground and are talking, if not they should be.
I love it.
Yeah. I was like, after the Stahl brothers made their stupid comments about Pride Night, they went to the Oilers to ask them. And if you listen to Zach Hyman's comments, like those are the ones I'm talking about. Like he was freaking amazing. And he was so like, basically he was like, of course I'm going to wear the jersey. Of course I'm going to talk about, how important it is to be inclusive to anybody and everybody, in the locker room, he was much more specific than I was, but again, I can't remember the words he specifically said, but like it was just kind of a joy and like wonderful to listen to. But like, if you listen to him, what he really wanted to say was, of course I'm inclusive. I'm Jewish. Like, I know what it feels like, to be persecuted, kind of thing. Like, you think I would do that to someone else? Like, no, kind of thing. And it was just amazing. So
I'll do my best to link to,
yeah,
if I can find the clip and find some of his clips. I'll just go through my WhatsApp. I know they're all there.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic, and I definitely have the interview, because I know they clipped it, because people were like, what did he say after he said it, because so yeah. But those comments that Fox and Hymen made that were very similar were actually also part of the threads of the B'nai Mitzvah Mistake.
Okay.
Because that kind of reaching for community is something I recognize. And I mentioned the Romance Schmooze Discord. The reason why that exists, it is full of romance readers and writers who are Jewish. And we are, it was something that was missing in my early career, and I didn't have a Jewish space in Romancelandia to sort of sit and be happily and joyously Jewish.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, now I do,
That's fantastic, because you made it. Or did you make
it?
You run
Felicia Grossman, Elizabeth Early, and I made it.
Fantastic.
Oh, with a whole bunch of other amazing people.
So B'nai Mitzvah Mistake comes out June 1st. Yes. So by the time this podcast comes out, people, you don't even have to pre-order it. You can just go buy it. Yeah. Order it from either Love Sweet Arrow, from bookshop.org, from your favorite independent bookstore. Request it from your library on the Libby app. We want it in circulation. Go ahead.
Say, not Libby. What's the other one? Not Overdrive.
Overdrive?
No. There are two main library apps. And that was on the other one. And it was on the other one. I made it very, very important and clear for it to be on that particular app.
Tumble Books, Canopy, Flipster.
Let me see if I can find it.
Cloud Library.
Hoopla. That's the one.
Hoopla. It
will be on Hoopla, as my other books are. So
wonderful.
Because it was very important to me. Libraries are important to me, generally speaking. The Warner Library, where I grew up, is a wonderful place. And I was a very early reader, and I do not think my family would have survived without the Warner Library and its children's room and the librarians and the awesomeness of it. So
great. Stacey, where can people find you online?
NY Stacey on Twitter, S Agdern on Instagram and TikTok, where I'm only a voyeur at this point. And Stacey A. Agdern on Facebook, and staceyagdern.com is the website.
Outstanding. I will link to everything in the show notes. Is there anything about the book, about romance and hockey, about crossovers you love that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to make sure to mention?
I think we've covered it all. Like, we had a really
fun.
Broad and amazing conversation. So
yeah.
I'm thrilled.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.